On the morning of August 2nd, 2011, Richard Forrester woke up to a strange message from his girlfriend on his phone. Robyn Gardner had sent him something in the middle of the night that made absolutely no sense to him. So he tried, calling her back, but she didn't really respond. Richard, figured she was probably just having some family drama on her vacation and really didn't think much more about it. I mean, after all, Robyn had told him that she was going on a trip with her family. But what happened next was not only a lie, it was something that would change her life forever. Okay, so 2 days earlier, on July 31st, Robyn had been rushing around their Frederick, Maryland apartment, throwing last-minute items into her suitcase, and Richard, just watched from the doorway as she packed. "I still can't believe your family surprised you with this trip," Richard said. "Florida's gonna be great this time of year." Robyn then looked up from her suitcase and smiled. "Yeah, it'll be a nice time to get away and just clear my head." She had recently lost her job as a dental assistant, and things between her and Richard had been tense lately. They'd had another argument that morning before she had started packing. Richard asked, "How long did you say you guys would be gone again?" "Just 5 days," Robyn replied, zipping up her bag. "I'll be back before you know it." So Richard, walked over and gave her a hug despite their earlier fight, and he said, "I love you. I hope you have fun with your family." "I love you too," she said, and something in her voice seemed a little bit off, but Richard didn't think much of it at that time. And a few hours later, Robyn was at Baltimore Washington International Airport, but she was not heading to Florida, and she definitely wasn't going with family. Because if you were to look down, Robyn's boarding pass said Aruba, and she was traveling with a man Richard had never heard of. This man was about 6 feet tall with graying hair and an imposing presence. He seemed excited about the trip, constantly checking his phone and making sure their paperwork was in order. "Are you ready for this?" the man asked as they waited to board, and Robyn, nodded, though she looked a bit nervous, and she said, "Yeah, I think so." And then they set off on the plane, and the flight to Aruba was actually uneventful. The man seemed to be in a good mood, talking about the beaches they were going to visit and all the restaurants they were going to try. Robyn, though, was mostly just looking out the window, occasionally, checking her phone to send messages to Richard about her supposed family vacation. Then they arrived in Aruba that evening and checked into their Marriott resort. Their room had a beautiful view of the Caribbean. And for a moment, Robyn actually seemed to finally relax. Maybe this trip would be exactly what she needed to, figure things out. And for the next day and a half, everything seemed normal. They spent time by the pool, they had drinks at the resort bar, and Robyn even posted a few photos on social media. And to anyone watching, they looked like a couple enjoying a romantic getaway. But on August 2nd, something went very wrong. That morning, around 2 a.m., Robyn had sent a strange message to Richard. And when Richard saw it later on, he tried to reach out, but she didn't really respond. Later that afternoon at 3 p.m., she sent Richard another message, and it said, "I love you. I care about you. We'll sort this out when I get back." And it would be the last communication Richard would hear from her. This man and Robyn, spent the day lounging around in the resort, and in the late afternoon, they decided to grab lunch at a restaurant called Rum Reef Bar and Grill. The restaurant, was just casual with an open-air feeling and a view of the ocean. Security cameras actually captured their arrival at 4:12 p.m. In the footage, Robyn is wearing a sundress, and she looks perfectly, put together with her hair and makeup done. But restaurant staff later said that she seemed a little woozy and barely ate any of her salad. She appeared heavily intoxicated despite it being early afternoon. And during lunch, Robyn told the server she was waiting for her husband to order, referring to the man with her. It was clear to everyone watching that they were in a romantic relationship and not just friends. And after lunch, the man suggested that they go snorkeling at a secluded area called Baby Beach, known for its shallow, calm waters. And Robyn wasn't particularly enthusiastic. She was the type who worried about messing up her hair and her makeup, but the man was insistent. A restaurant worker later said that he thought it was odd that they were going snorkeling because Robyn seemed so, perfectly put together, with her clothing, hair, and makeup all carefully done. And they left the restaurant at 4:15 p.m. Security cameras caught them walking toward the beach area. And what happens next depends entirely on who you believe. But at 6:02 p.m., security cameras show something that would shock investigators. The man returned to Rum Reef Restaurant alone. He's seen, tapping on the closed shutters of the bar, almost like he's announcing his presence. And at 6:20 p.m., he bursts into the back kitchen area, frantic. "My friend is missing," he told the staff. "We were snorkeling and she never came back up to shore. You need to call the police." So the restaurant staff, they immediately called 911. And when police arrived within minutes, the man introduced himself as Gary Giordano, a 50-year-old businessman from Gaithersburg, Maryland. He explained that he and Robyn had been snorkeling together when she all of a sudden vanished. According to Gary, they had gone into the water together at Baby Beach. And he claimed, they were snorkeling when all of a sudden he realized that they had drifted a little too far out and the current was getting a little bit stronger. So, he signaled for Robyn to come back toward shore. And when he turned around to swim back himself, he became distressed and looked back for Robyn, but she wasn't there anymore. He claimed that he searched for her but couldn't find any trace. So panicked, he swam back to shore and spent an hour looking for help before finally making it back to that restaurant. But when police spoke to Gary, his demeanor struck them as very odd. Instead of being, frantic or emotional like you would expect from someone whose companion had just totally vanished, Gary seemed eerily calm. He was cooperative but not particularly helpful. And something about his story just didn't sit right with the officers. But of course, they began searching the water immediately, bringing in boats and helicopters and dive teams. And the search continued for days, involving over 60 officials, FBI agents, Coast Guard vessels, and volunteers. And they absolutely scoured the whole coastline. And they checked underwater caves even. And then they brought in the cadaver dogs. And what they found was nothing. No body, no clothing, no trace of Robyn Gardner anywhere. Meanwhile, though, back in Maryland, Richard Forrester was watching all of this unfold on the news in complete shock. The woman he'd been living with for 2.5 years, the woman who told him that she was going to Florida with her family, was now missing in Aruba with a man named Gary Giordano? I mean, Richard had never heard this name before in his life. And as police now dug deeper into this case, more disturbing details began to emerge about who Gary Giordano really was and how he knew Robyn. You see, Gary wasn't a family friend, he wasn't a co-worker, he wasn't someone Robyn had known for years. Gary was a man that Robyn had met online over a year earlier on a website called Adult Friend Finder, a platform that described itself as the world's largest sex and swinger personals community. And their relationship, if you could call it that, had been on and off for months. Sometimes they would go out for drinks and be friendly, and then not talk for months at a time. Recently, Gary had been persistent about taking a vacation together. And when Robyn had backed out of a cruise that he'd suggested earlier, Gary had sent her this angry, aggressive text that made her friend Christina Jones so uncomfortable, she still refused to repeat them publicly. But now, with Robyn jobless and her relationship with Richard a little bit rocky, she had agreed to this, 5-day getaway in Aruba. And what Richard didn't know was that this wasn't just a casual vacation between friends. Because as investigators would later discover, just before leaving for the airport, Robyn had received $5,000 in cash from Gary. And according to later testimony, this wasn't a gift. It was a payment for services during that week. Meanwhile, Gary was preparing to leave Aruba on his originally scheduled return date. as if nothing had happened at all. This struck police as extremely suspicious. I mean, if your travel companion had just vanished into the ocean, wouldn't you stay to help with the search? And on August 5th, 3 days after Robyn's disappearance, police arrested Gary at the airport as he was trying to board his flight home. They charged him with suspicion of murder, manslaughter, kidnapping, and fraud. But Gary's arrest wasn't the most shocking revelation in this case. If you guys love stories of the paranormal or just regular mystery stories like this, please make sure to hit that like button. And also now, I guess sharing is the best thing that you can do. So share it. Plus, not to mention, on Tuesday or Wednesday, probably Tuesday, I'm going to release another episode. But this is personal. Something had just happened to me, and it has changed my outlook on life forever. But we'll get to that later. While Gary sat in the Aruba jail, investigators were digging into his background and his relationship with Robyn. And what they discovered would completely change how everybody viewed this romantic getaway. You see, just days before their trip, Gary had taken out a $1.5 million accidental death insurance policy on Robyn Gardner, listing himself as the sole beneficiary. And this wasn't a mutual decision. Robyn had no role in purchasing the insurance. Gary had filled all the paperwork out himself, and he made himself the beneficiary and paid for all the premiums. And the insurance company later argued that the policy wasn't legally enforceable because Gary and Robyn weren't married, weren't business partners, and didn't own property together. Because Gary had falsely identified Robyn as his partner when they actually had what the company described as a casual and non-exclusive relationship. But as more details emerged, the picture became even darker. Friends told investigators that Gary had previously asked Robyn to go on several vacations with him. But when she backed out to go to New York with her friend Christina instead, Gary had sent her the most aggressive, harmful text messages. And police also discovered that Gary had a history of troubling behavior with women. 2 ex-girlfriends had previously accused him of abuse, though no charges were ever filed. And when investigators searched Gary's belongings, they found something else disturbing. Explicit photos of Robyn on his phone, suggesting the relationship was far more intimate than casual friendship. And for 4 months, Gary sat in Aruba jail while prosecutors tried to build a case against him. They believed he had murdered Robyn, possibly by, pushing her underwater during their snorkeling trip. But without a body or witnesses, proving murder was at this point nearly impossible. And of course, during this whole time, Gary maintained his innocence throughout. He claimed that he routinely took out travel insurance when he went on trips, and that he had acted on the advice of his lawyers. He insisted Robyn had simply been swept out to sea by a riptide or a strong current. But witnesses raised questions about whether Robyn ever went in that water at all. Restaurant staff who saw her that afternoon said that she seemed too concerned about her appearance to go snorkeling. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup was flawless, and she was wearing this very nice clothing. Not exactly the look of somebody planning to go and jump in the ocean. And some witnesses claimed that they saw Gary and Robyn walking on the beach, but never actually entering the water at all. And Gary's timeline also has gaps. If Robyn disappeared around 4:15 p.m., what was he doing for an hour and 45 minutes before he reported her missing? I mean, Gary claimed that he spent that time searching for her and, getting help, but no witnesses could verify this. In November 2011, after 4 months in custody, Gary was released. The judge ruled that the prosecutors didn't have sufficient evidence to continue holding him. So Gary immediately returned to Maryland, where he was met by a media frenzy. I mean, Robyn's family at this point was just devastated by his release. Her sister Danielle confronted Gary on Dr. Phil, demanding to know why he hadn't stayed in Aruba longer to help search for Robyn if he truly cared about her. If you cared about Robyn, you would have stayed there longer and you would have looked for her, Danielle told him. Gary's response, though, was cold and calculated. I didn't kill Robyn. Never harmed her. We never even fought. We didn't fight. We had a great relationship. But Gary's troubles, weren't over. American Express filed a lawsuit to void the insurance policy, arguing that Gary had no legitimate reason to insure Robyn's life. Gary countersued, demanding the full payout. And this insurance battle revealed more disturbing details about Gary's planning. According to court documents, Gary had specifically requested coverage for travel companions and had made himself the sole beneficiary without Robyn's knowledge or consent. I mean, who thinks up of this stuff? So meanwhile, Richard Forrester, the boyfriend, was left to piece together the truth about the woman that he thought he knew. Not only had Robyn been living a double life with Gary, but friends revealed that she had actually struggled with alcohol and had been described as a sneaky drinker by family members. The investigation also uncovered that Robyn's relationship with Richard wasn't as stable as he had believed. She had been pulling away from him for months, and the $5,000 payment from Gary, well, that suggested their arrangement wasn't just about companionship. And now years passed with no resolution. Gary wrote a self-published book claiming his innocence and appeared on television shows trying to, clear his name. He suggested that, Robyn might have been the victim of human trafficking, pointing to Aruba's proximity to Venezuela and the island problems with organized crime. And Richard actually agreed with this theory, but he suspected that Gary might have been involved in any trafficking scheme rather than being an innocent victim of this circumstance. Today, more than 13 years later, Robyn Gardner remains missing and is presumed dead. Gary Giordano has never been charged with any crime related to her disappearance. The case remains officially open but cold. Aruban authorities still consider Gary their primary suspect. But without new evidence, it's unlikely that he will ever face trial. Not to mention, 3 other Americans have drowned in that exact same area of Aruba where Robyn allegedly disappeared, including a former NBA player, leading to new warning signs about dangerous riptides. And this has given some credibility to Gary's story about, these treacherous currents that took her. But for Robyn's family and Richard, these developments provide little comfort. They believe Gary knows exactly what happened to Robyn Gardner on that beach in Aruba, and that the truth died with her in the Caribbean waters. The woman who told her boyfriend she was going on a surprise family vacation to Florida had instead flown to Aruba with a man she'd met on a sex website, taken $5,000 in cash for unknown services, and vanished without a trace. Whether Gary Giordano was responsible for her death or simply an unlucky witness to a tragic accident, that's a question that may never be answered. The only person who knows what really happened that day walked out of Aruba a free man with nothing but a phone full of photos and a $1.5 million dream that never came true. So, what do you actually think happened to Robyn? Let me know right now in the comments. And thank you guys so much for watching. Like I said, I got another one coming out Tuesday. And thank you so much to the new people that have joined the channel. Once you subscribe, you can join at any tier. We got a couple people now, and I just want to thank them so much. And if you consider joining or hitting the like button or sharing this, just know I got love for you. I appreciate you guys so much. That's all I got for you today. I'll see you next time. Cheers.
Once you're in there, you're on ground, you're safe, you turn around, she's gone.
Gone.
Why not get your fins, your mask, go get her? You are the most immediate trained help there. You are a certified scuba diver with gear in your car, fins and mask. Why didn't you go back in the water after your friend?
The same reason why I called the Coast Guard and none of them got in the water. I stayed there till dark, and not one single person got in that water.
You knew that hours later.
No,
I'm asking you at the moment.
Because it's dangerous. I'll tell you why. Because I just came out. I fought for my life to get back. I'm exhausted. I'm completely exhausted. My heart's pounding out of my chest, exhausted. It's not going to do her or me any good to jump back in that water, right? So it's time to go get help. That's what I did. It's a choice.
Did you
and
scream?
I made that choice.
Did you scream for help at the time?
There was nobody to scream to. So I ran to the restaurant to get help.
But it didn't occur to you to put your fins back on, get your mask and snorkel, and you're tired, your heart is pounding, you're exhausted. That didn't occur to you to go back in with proper
I think you asked me 3 times about this thing. I answered as best I can answer. I can answer a 3rd time, but it's the same answer. That's the choice I made. Based on my physical being, that's the choice I made.
Okay. Well, I'm asking you because I'm not understanding your mindset at the time. You keep saying that you want to explain your actions, but then when I ask you about it,
I was completely
you
exhausted.
get defensive about it. I don't understand why.
I'll explain it again for the same way again.
Well, I'm not dumb. I can follow you. I promise I'll keep up.
When I was there, as exhausted as I was, right, I decided to go back in the water was not an option. It was not an option.